Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I have some free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Now, today's ink was once again donated by the wonderful, mysterious benefactor. It's Noodler's V-Mail series, Mandalay Maroon. And as I've probably mentioned in probably a couple of videos by now, maroon is one of my favorite colors. And pink is my absolute least favorite. So I had some issues with this ink. Yeah. The pens used were this Parson's Essential by Italix with just a medium nib. It's a very simple medium. It's not overly wet or dry. And then just for fun's sake, I also used this TWSBI 580 with a 1.5 stub, and yes, that is a fairly big stub, but thought I'd compare it to some other inks. As you can see, it's not really a maroon, but I thought I'd compare it to Diatramentis Scented Cherry, Ackerman 17 Staten General Red, which I think means like State General Red. I don't know what that means, but anyways. Graf von Faber-Castell's Garnet, because they're all sort of like this, I don't know, like there's really nothing quite like any of these inks, but particularly nothing like Mandalay Maroon. It's a weird pinkish thing, I don't know. So the chromatography is interesting. So here's how you're supposed to do chromatography, where you put the ink at the bottom, which you can see very clearly, and then it sort of pushes some pink up. And I don't know if the camera will capture the true color of this, but there's some brown in here, and then there's some near yellow at the corners, but that's a brownish color in there. And then here I let it dry. As you can see, really not much changed. It's about the same. So top down in density, Clairefontaine 90 grams per square meter. As you can see, there is some shading, not an overabundance, but some. And it's definitely not really a maroon. It's sort of like a dark pink that wants to grow up to be maroon someday. And it's an odd color. I sort of don't know what to call it. Yeah. Anyways, the medium took 11 seconds to dry. Oddly, the stub took 10. Yeah, and I don't know if this will really come through, but there's sort of like this woolly texture to it. And I said there's some strange extreme echo in a few localized locations, which is seriously just there and there. That's it. Which is weird. But, yeah. No bleed, no feather, no spread, really. It is pretty wet. I'd say this is a 6.5, maybe a 7. It's a pretty wet ink. I said maybe a finer nib would do better. Now, the water resistance really isn't too bad. I mean, you can see that. That's very clear. It's very there. It didn't feather, didn't explode. It did dye the page a bit. Did turn just like a more straight up pink. But, yeah, not too bad. Next is Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter. Where, again, I feel like you can see some shading. In fact, I feel like maybe on here the shading's even more noticeable. But, yeah, again, the medium took 11 seconds. The 1.5 stub took 12. But, yeah. I said there's bleed only in places where I am an idiot. Because I tried to lay it on a bit thick in places to see if I could get a halo or some sheen. And I nearly came through the other side. But other than that, no trouble. No real bleed. No feather, no spread. There is some wooliness. I hope this will come through. There's something about sort of the textural look of this ink. But yeah. Again, water test, very good. It turned a pink. But still very there, very clear. Didn't explode, didn't feather. Dyed the page a tiny bit, but not too much. Next is Tomoe River Paper, where, as expected, the dry times got just a bit longer at least. The medium took 16 seconds, the 1.5 stub took 18. Still kind of weird how close the dry times are. Here it definitely looks more like a pink. Here it doesn't look like it could qualify for maroon at all. There is a bit of a halo effect. I don't know how clear that'll come out in the words. I feel like around the Q in the bottom you can kind of see some of it, but yeah, no bleed, no feather, no spread. Finally it lost that woolly texture here. It just looks very straightforward. You might want to look out for some of that echo. Of course, that is always to taste, but yeah, water test. Considering it's Tomoe River, it loves to just let that ink, run screaming when you add more water. But here, still very clear, still very there, still definitely pink, but definitely recoverable. Now, next I tested both pens on 20-pound copier paper, and the 1.5 stub did predictably badly. It took half a second to dry. Water test, very clear, very there. It pretty much didn't change at all. But it bled out the wazoo, and that was an awful sound. In the medium nib, really not much better. It dried essentially instantly, but it has, here it looks like I'm writing with a felt tip marker. All character is gone. It's bad. That is a lot of bleed for a medium. Water test, oddly, this one didn't do quite as well. Here there was a bit more explodey, but still very clear, very dark. You could recover that. Next is Mead Notebook Paper, where again I tested both pens. In the 1.5 stub, it took 1 second to dry. But, yeah, what I thought was interesting with both of these cases, this is not full bleed through. Do you see? It doesn't make it all the way through. It's just really extreme echo, which I kind of don't know what to make of that. But yeah, there's no shading. Here it definitely looks more like a pink than a maroon. Really does. But the water test really wasn't too bad. Didn't dye the page, didn't feather, didn't explode. In the medium, it took half a second to dry. Again, it kind of looks more like a felt tip marker. But again, here, there's lots of little dots, but even here, it's not full bleed. It's just very extreme echo. Again, water test, pretty good. Didn't feather, didn't explode, didn't do any of that bad stuff. Now here is modern Moleskine paper, which means it is awful. And while this ink really didn't do too well on here, it didn't do as bad as some we've seen before. Here's 4.5 seconds to dry. You do see some feathering, some very extreme woolliness. It's not great in this 1.5 stub. The water test is probably the worst we've seen yet, in that it's very bleh. And there's some but we've seen more bleed from like a very simple diamine ink on this paper. So, and this is a 1.5 stub, so not too bad. Here's the medium, where again it kind of looks like a felt tip marker, and there is some feathering, but not as bad as we've seen in other cases. 3.5 seconds to dry, very woolly. That is more bleed than I like to see in a medium, but considering this is Moleskine, that's really not bad. And the water test was awful because Moleskine has this thing about water, but it could be a lot worse. Again, it did feather, it did explode, but still. Well, there you go. There's Noodler's Mandalay Maroon from the V-Mail series. It's not maroon. I love maroon. I would love a maroon. This is not maroon. It's a pink. I hate pink. But this is a decent ink. My color preferences aside, it's a fairly decent ink. Is it perfect? No. Has great water resistance, shades a bit, has a slight halo effect on Tomoe River. And while its performance isn't perfect on cheap papers, considering how cheap these papers are, it's really not bad. So, for your consideration from the Triple N Network, if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching. Bye.